Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video lesson is going to be a FAQ tutorial, and it was a question asked by Michael Land about atmospheric perspective. And Michael Land, that's a great question, and I'm so glad to be able to do this tutorial for you. I'm going to be doing this in two parts, but the first part is really simple because when people think of perspective, they think of this. You draw your line, and I'm not measuring, so I'm just going to do this. And then what they do, they put their vanishing point. They draw their box. Oh, let's just do it this way. Okay. And then you've got the box, but then you need to do your sides. And the way you get your sides done is you go to the corner and we draw a line. And then you get the side of the building something like this. And this won't make sense now because of I did the rounded corner, but that's the atmosphere. That's regular perspective. And you would typically shade this because it will show depth. Okay, and I just quickly. This is not atmospheric perspective. This is the regular perspective. This is perspective where it makes objects look like they are going in the distance. So with this here, this looks like the building is, if you get rid of this, it looks like the building has depth. Okay, this is just 1 point perspective. And I'm making it a point now with trying to write neatly so you can understand what I'm saying. So 1 point perspective. Atmospheric perspective is, I like to explain it in the way of a landscape. So if you have your landscape, and let's say you have a horizon line, and let's say you have mountains in the background, and you have grass in here, how do you make the mountain look further in the distance? We're not going to be using any of these angles. We're going to be using values to do this. Now, I did break this project up. I started off with one idea, then it splintered off into 6 different projects. So I'm going to be doing them in smaller videos. This particular video is how to create atmospheric perspective using Chromatic Black. And I will tell you right now, if you dive into atmospheric perspective with full color, you will fail unless you've done it before with regular values. The values, the lightness and darkness of color is the most critical component of creating atmospheric perspective. And it's so much easier teaching it technically in black and white than we're going with color. We will be doing full color later on, but right now we're going to work with black and white in just a couple of brushes. All right, so the first thing we basically need our journal. You can use full paper canvas and that, but the problem is that it's so bulky. For these studies, I always recommend using a journal. And I've got one page prepared, and I want to show you how easy it is to prepare the next page. For supplies, I've got just a few brushes. You're not going to need all these. I'm going to be using filberts and flats depending on how I'm going to paint it. But first brush I'm going to use is a big fat old filbert, which is basically the brush that's like a flat, but it's been shaped going around. And I've got my journal, and I'm going to be upcycling a page so I can do this study. For paints, I'm going to be using the DecoArt Traditions paints, ultramarine blue, permanent alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, and opaque titanium white. We're going to be making chromatic black to create the study. You can just use black and white if you want, carbon black or whatever. I prefer making my own because I can adjust the temperature of the paints, which is not the right way I should say it. I can adjust where the colors shift on the color wheel. And on top of that, I can play with the transparency. But right now, all you need to know is we're working black and white. So whatever method you want to choose, get your paints out for that. And then gesso. So I've got a choice of using chalk gesso or just traditional gesso. This is from DecoArt as well. They're all from DecoArt. The chalky gesso is great when working with stuff that I want a real suede finish to it. This DecoArt Traditions, it's not really suedey, but it does have good tooth. And the chalky gesso you can apply thickly, but this I want to apply in just 2 coats. And I'm going to show you how to do this because when we're working with a study, when we're working work with values on a study, it's critical that your piece be white. painting is hard enough as it is. We don't need to make it even more difficult with trying to be fancy. So, oh my goodness. All right, so I dampened my brush, but it's not wet, okay? And if you're not sure, you rinse it in water and then just get rid of the excess, or even just let it sit on the edge of something for about 15 minutes. You just want it damp. And this Tradition gesso is perfect because it's nice and thick. This is just a journal page that this has been upcycled, I think, from the thickness of, I think, about 4 or 5 times, because this is really thick. There's other stuff underneath with gesso, and all I'm going to do is cover the existing page. Now, if you already know this, then just skip ahead to the next section, but I'm going to assume that this is something very new for you, for others that are watching as well, that it's critical that you start with a white piece. Other artists may have a different method of doing it, but this is how I do it. This is how I teach it. So I'm just going to get that gesso on there. And if you're using inexpensive gesso that may be too transparent, no big deal. Just apply multiple coats. But you need to start with something that is white. A little bit of the violet showing through, that's fine, but you don't want it like that. And then I'm just going to feather that out. And I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to apply another coat. Okay, so I'm not going to do that right now. So that's what you want to. You want to make sure actually, this isn't even bad. So 1 coat, that's not bad. Make sure it is completely dry. Flip that around. Magic of TV. All right, so for this study, for the atmosphere perspective, and I say that so fast, we're going to work on a mountain. Lucky you. That's hard, right? Not really. It's the best way to show, because when we think of atmospheric perspective, when it comes to landscapes, mountains are the best way to judge when you have ground coming towards you, mountains way off in the distance. You can do this with charcoal. I just put my fingerprint in there. I'm going to use a pencil, and you want to use something soft. You do not want to use a hard pencil, because then your graphite will actually come right through the painting and you'll gouge your paper. Because of the atmospheric perspective, we want to focus more on above the horizon line. I'm going to make my horizon line a little bit lower. If you put it too high, your mountains are going to go right off the page. So I'm going to think right about there. If possible, you want to use a ruler. And I love using, this is a quilting ruler. And I love using that because I can actually line up let's say this mark right here, line that up with the edge of the paper, and it will automatically be straight. So, and if I did it this way, otherwise you kind of have to measure 3 times, cut once type of thing. But this is a great way to judge it because it goes right to the edge and I can see that it is straight. If you've got a square, one of those squares, that's great, but I'm not allowed to bring that stuff upstairs. So we have our horizon line. So the deal is that this is going to be foreground and this is going to be background, and we're going to set it way back. The other thing to do, so you've got your line there. Oh, no, you guys are going to ask. So this book is, I think, 8 inches. 9 inches by 6 inches. And I went about 2 3/4 inches above. I can go millimeters, but you guys hate it when I go metric. So about 2.5 inches above. You can go 2, 2.5, 3, but leave more sky showing. The mountains, though, the tippy top of the highest mountain, let's make it, and I want to get that in there. Let's make it about 2.5 inches. So we're going to go right about to there. That's going to be the top of the mountain. And I'm not going to draw a line because it will likely change. Let's make our chromatic black. I mean, I'm really going basic with this stuff. So again, if you already know how to make chromatic black, just skip ahead. You can use gesso if you want. I'm just going to use my paint. You want a good amount of white. And with the chromatic black, this one here that I'm working, it's going to be with ultramarine blue, permanent alizarin crimson, and burnt sienna. And you don't need that much. I'm just putting it out there just for video purposes. Now the good thing about this, if you've got the DecoArt craft paint, that works just as well too. So you want to get a blue, you want to get a brown, and maybe something that's like a deep, deep red. Okay, let's move that over here. And typically when I work with values, a gray palette is a good thing to use because it's neutral. For video, white is better though. So I'm going to take a small brush. Now what we want to do is we want to make a, we want to get this background filled in. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a white over here. Then we're going to take about half the brush of blue, half the brush of burnt sienna. And we're just going to mix that in. And I'm going to take a bit more blue. I'm going to bring some white in there. And what we want to get is a gray. This will dry very quickly, but I have a bottle of water here. That's actually pretty good. Just a, you know, just, that's a little bit more white. Don't forget, when these dry, they're going to get darker. Now I'm going to hit that with a speck of alizarin crimson, and that's too much. So let's go again. So it's start off with equal parts of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. Lighten it a bit with white, and then you've got your, I'm gonna add another half ultramarine blue. So my mixture today is 1.5 parts of ultramarine blue and 1 part of burnt sienna. Now let's hit that with some white. I'll put the white over here. So you guys know what I'm doing now, right? If you've seen the video that I made with the value strings, this is what I'm doing. All right. Nothing will be whiter than white. We also want to avoid getting anything too dark, too much darker darker than that. So we're going to take the lightest light that we have, and we're going to start here. Going to take a bit more white on the side. We want the white to be just a little bit darker than that. See how you can judge the values? A bit more white. And I'm always going off on the side because I can come back and use these other values. Now the furnace is on, things are going to dry super fast. Good. So you want to get a mixture in there. Don't worry too much about getting it perfect, and wet on wet is so much easier for this if you can do it wet on wet, which means the paint is wet and you don't let it dry. Okay, we've got that nice horizon line there as well. Don't worry too much if it's crooked. I've got that in there. Now I'm going to take a bit more of a darker value. So now I want to go a little bit darker than this. I'm going to start at the top. A little bit more. I'm going to put that over here. And as I'm painting through, I'm letting some of the white kind of show through so we can have some nice things happening there. The mountains are going to be here. It's not so important here. It's what's important is at the top. So we can visualize the mountains now. Think of just making kind of squiggle lines here. So just thinking that, and then I'm going to kind of fade that through. Don't make them too harsh. Go with a bit of the darker value. Come in. And I'm using the edge of the brush always towards the edge of the mountain. So just get something in there. And what I'm going to focus on, I'm going to focus the light being on this side. Okay, which means then the darker values are going to be over here, and the lighter values are going to come down here. See, I'm not focusing too much, anything too hard. Just getting something on there. Okay. So now we've got these mountains sort of blocked in very, very roughly. And as the piece starts to dry, everything's going to get a little bit darker. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that the sky behind the mountains is lighter than this edge here. So see how these kind of blend in together? It needs to be just a speck darker. So I'm just going to get, oh, that's way too light. Come in with just a little bit of a darker mix, not too dark, but then you can always come back and adjust it. It's no big deal. So you want the mountains to be slightly darker than the background, like that. Now we can come in and say, all right, well, what about the foreground? So what we have is we have the sky being dark, and it gets lighter as it goes down to the horizon line. Before the mountains even go in, dark sky at the top, light to the bottom. The mountains, figure out where your sun's going to be. The sun's going to be here. So you're going to make sure that your values are going to be darker than the sky. They're going to be lighter on the side facing the sun, darker on the opposite side. For the foreground, think of it like a mirror flip. For the foreground, we're going to go lighter at the top and darker on the bottom. So it's a mirror flip. Sky is dark at the top, ground is dark at the bottom. Sky is light at the bottom, foreground is light at the top. So dark, light, light, dark. Maybe say, well, why when we painted the sky, why didn't we completely go through? Because that would be easy. You need to understand. So now we're going to do again, we're going to come in and we're going to create our base. And what we want our base to be is lighter than the mountain. So at the top of the horizon line, I wish I could, my desk was pulled out and I'm right against the edge, and I gotta fix this. I'll fix this before the next video. And as we go down, we can darken the value. So the bottom can be even darker than that. So let's go like this. And then lighter as you work upwards. Now, if you're an oil painter, this will be ideal because you can do, everything can be done wet on wet. Just make sure that your transition is dark to light. Acrylics is a little bit more difficult. Because everything dries so fast. Now you can use extender, that's not a big deal. If you want to paint a winter scene, this is an exercise for you. But before making a drastic change in your values, just make sure that you let everything dry first if you're working with acrylics, because like I said before, they do dry darker. I'm going to make my edges a little bit darker, my corners, to kind of contain everything. Something like that. Then we can go into the detail of, okay, do we want this to be snow? Do we want it to be water? Do we want it to be grass? It doesn't matter at this point. Right now we're just working with the values. Okay, that's tacky. If I were to start painting this now, because it is tacky, it's not wet, it's tacky, I run the risk of lifting this up. So you can take a heat gun or a hair blower at its lowest air force and just dry everything. I'm going to rinse my brush. And now I want to do some talking. What we're going to do at this point now is that you should already see something happening here. If I look at this, and yeah, this definitely looks like mountains. We need to define these a little bit more. I'm looking now and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I want to darken this just a little bit more, and I really want to bring that light down at the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut into the mountains. And this is now the cutting is a technique that's used more in advanced painting. I never liked cutting into, I never liked the cutting technique when probably about, I would say I learned about it about 2 years into my formal art studies, and I never liked it until I really started seeing how the old masters did it. And yeah, it's something that's nicely done. And you have to think of it, and a lot of the old masters also did it with a lot of portraits that they did. And some people may like it, some people don't, and that's going to be up to you whether you want to do it or not. So I'm going to take a smaller brush, and I'm going to take some white. What I want to do is I want to get a value that's lighter than the mountain. I just put my fingers in there again. And I take a little bit of gray. Judge that. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. A bit more white. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to cut into the mountain like that. I'm using the edge of the brush because what I can do is I can come in and it makes those nice edges. It's almost like just geometric shapes. Okay, and then before it dries, I'm just going to fade that up into the sky. You don't want any hard edges on there. So I'm not liking this. It looks more like a box, so I can come in and bring that down just a little bit more, like that. Let me cut that in just a little bit more. I don't want this to be a pokey because this mountain is pretty well almost in the center. See, the whole thing with this particular exercise is playing with values. We're not going to paint a pretty picture. We're playing with values. I'm going to move this over a bit. And another important thing when you're working with studies like this is when we're working with atmospheric perspective is that things that are in the background are going to be soft. So we're not going to paint individual little trees. You may smudge trees, but we're not going to paint individual little trees. You notice the mountain I'm painting here is a lot softer. Come down here. Now we're going to take the white, and I'm going to spray a little bit of water. Oh, this is just got everywhere. Oh. And I'm going to take a little bit of the gray, darken that up a little bit more. I'm going to blend that up. And it's still wet, not tacky. If it's tacky, you got to let it dry. Now, what I could do, and it's not too bad now, is working with a filbert to bring the color up a little bit. So I can take that existing paint and I can go all the way to the top. But you can see that because the brush is so small, it's taking forever. I'm going to go in and get some dark. Come here. We got to make sure the dark is at the top. And I'm going to skip around because it's going to give the impression of clouds. Now we're starting to get a little bit tacky now. You can try to spray with water, but what you're going to do is you're going to end up lifting the paint. Ideally, if you can use a bigger brush to get it done faster, or use extender. I'm going to get my filbert brush, quickly try to make a darker mix here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I got to work fast. It's all about the feel of the brush. And only you'll know what that is. That's why when I'm doing it, I love to paint thickly, because it takes much longer time for the paint to dry. But then when you're ready to start doing other stuff, then you're going, ah, come on. Keep everything nice and soft. Even if you just mist over the mountains, no big deal. Just come in here, go into the dark right here. And I want to share with you a little technique. Some of you may be able to do it, some may not, but then you'll have to kind of work your way around that. So see how I'm just softening that up? Two techniques I'm going to show you or talk about. You can take a little soft brush, and then all you're going to do is first fluff it up, make sure you get rid of all the hairs, because one got stuck there. And you're just going to take the brush and you're just going to tickle it. What the heck is that? Oh. Let's fix you up. Let's fix you up. I'm looking here at little angles. I am seeing so much dust on here. You know what? These brushes have been sitting. These particular brushes have been sitting for months. I haven't used them. Fingerprint. You're going to just tickle between where the colors meet, and it's just going to soften everything up. You're just going to, not taking off much, just a speck. And make sure you rinse your mop brush right away. You don't have the mop brush, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Now we let everything dry. Now looking at this right off bat, right where it is right now, we do start seeing some depth taking place. Sky's dark at the top, getting lighter. The ground is dark at the bottom, getting lighter. And then we have the mountains, which are kind of like, stuck right out there in the middle. The mountains are darker than the sky and darker than the horizon line for the foreground. Okay, the foreground could be grass, water, snow, ice, it doesn't matter. Now the mountains are dry, and for this I like working with a flat brush. Let me just rinse these off. You don't want to leave your brushes sitting in water because it will dissolve the glue. I'm going to get something fresh. You want a brush that's got a really good chisel edge on it that's going to cut, make nice lines. This is a good one here. So nice brush. What I want to do now is I want to work with a lighter color than what I'm putting down for highlights. So I'm going to take the white, and I'm thinking, and then this is great where you can test it. So you want it to be darker than the sky, but just a smidgen darker. So it's more like it's going to be the next value darker than what you've got there. And you're going to have to play with this, but you want it to be really, really soft. I'm going to fix that edge there. Don't want it to be a straight line. I can come in and just make that rough, but you want it to be soft. See how we cut in to make those rough shapes, but now we're going to use that little brush and we're just going to soften those edges. And what that's going to give you is, because with atmospheric perspective everything's so far back, we need to soften it because things are not that detailed when we want to soften it. Because what you're looking at is, if you're looking at this mountain, atmospheric perspective is all the crud in the air diffusing everything as you go back. When you're working in full color, it has a bit more of a mauve sense to it. But we need to soften those edges because we can't see individual detail. So just a speck darker than the sky. And that's a little bit too light, but that's okay. I know that this will dry darker. But we're going to go here, and that might be a bit too dark. Yep. we go. So remember, the left side's going to be lighter, the right side's going to be darker. But you just want to use that edge and just soften that just a little bit. And then this will be this side, although the light's here, this side's going to be a little bit darker, and that's going to show some depth. I'm going to put a little bit of a lump there to show some shape. So we're going to be light, dark, light, dark. You can do all the dark first, you can do all the light first, it doesn't matter. A little bit darker, that's why you've got all these values here. Now for my case, I need to make up more paint than I need because everything is drying so quickly. And I'm always putting the paint down to judge. So remember those questions I keep teaching you about when the color theory classes? You look at what you need. Well, right now we're working just from memory. It's more of a study. You put the color down, you look at it, you analyze it. Now all the questions we don't need to worry about when it comes to the color wheel, because we're working with black and dark, but it's the colors that what you want to ask yourself for the question is it too light or is it too dark? And I think I probably just confused the heck out of it right now because I'm talking so fast. I'm trying to get these videos done in a shorter period of time, but foundation lessons, I don't like rushing. So see here with the value, I just created that soft line there. And now we see a ridge that sets this further back. All right, so I stopped and I adjusted the camera, and I'm just going to tilt this. So what you can do when you're at this point is I want you to take a picture with your phone or whatever imaging device you have, then zoom it up so you don't see the edges, and then take a look. You can definitely see that these are mountains. The sky is light in the back. I mean, this is still too dark, but you can definitely see some atmospheric perspective going on here. Okay, so you should be at this point now where you have dark sky, lighter as it goes down, dark foreground at the bottom, lighter as that goes up, and you've got your mountains. And the value of the mountains, you'll notice, will be within 1 or 2 titches, the dark part, equal to the top and bottom of the foreground, and the light part will be right about in the middle. Okay, you're not going to get it to the lightest light because then you wouldn't be able to see it. This still is a bit dark because when we're working with acrylics, they get darker as they dry. There's only one company that I know of right now that their acrylics don't get darker, but that's such a new technology. I don't know whether it works for long term. But all you have to do is just adjust. So you can think of when you really know your values is that once you get to that level, just paint a little bit lighter than you normally would. You can also work with, watercolors. Oils are fantastic for this technique. It's absolutely amazing because you don't have to worry about the stuff drying. See all these little pits here? That's dust. It's in my brushes. So if you're not going to use your brushes for a month or so, put a Ziploc bag over them to stop the dust from going in. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom the camera back out, and I'm going to grab my little brush again. So now all we need to focus on, we need to just tidy up this edge here, and this is dry, that's dry, that's a little bit tacky. I made up a little bit more paint, which you can't see. I want to get a good close-up here. Let me zoom back out a bit. Go. And I can't go any further this way to sit because I'm at the edge of the table. I gotta get Joe to fix this. Let's just do this to show the palette. There we go. So I just made more paint, which I would then bring in. But look at the value of that. That is much browner, not as blue. So when you're making up your values, don't worry too much whether it's too blue, too red, whatever, because you can always come in and add a little bit more of whatever color it should go towards. That's more brown. So once you get your chromatic black mixes really, make a nice big pile. Even make a big pile and put it into an empty bottle. That way you've got something ready that you can use. There we go. Let me get a paper towel. And remember, when your painting is tacky, you've got to stop, let it dry, otherwise you're just going to lift the stuff up. See my fingerprint here? I touched it and it just lifted the paint up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some white, and now I want to go a little bit lighter, still lighter than that. And I'm just going to go a little bit lighter, just where it touches the edge of the sky. Not so much here because it's in the corner. Just I'm just going to soften that with my fingers. I just blotted the brush. Your fingers are going to be your friend here. So what we're doing is we're softening the clouds, which is going to push them even further back. But soften everything as it goes down to the bottom. Okay. And I'm going to work this one here. I could probably even go with a bit of a lighter, or sorry, a smaller brush. I got to turn this. I can't do this like this because I want to work with the outside edge. There we go. Just soften that. Oh, that's a bit too light. Working very, very slowly. Always making sure that you're softening that value in the bottom. I don't want any hard lines there. Okay, and I'm going to bring this one right across. I'm not going to worry about this piece here. So the lighter pieces, you know, really, I mean, this one's really nice. I like this. And by using much lighter values, it'll look like snow. You don't want it perfect. And now we have ridges. So it's going to bring it forward a little bit. Okay. So let's go the opposite way. Let's go to something a little bit darker. Not too dark. So we're going to darken up what we have now. This is why it's so great working with Chromatic Black. You just can work in the same pile of paint all the time. I want something, nope, a little bit darker than that. There we go. I'm just going to bring that in there. Nice and soft. Here as well. I'm going to bring that right over. And these I'm going to blend because they can come in together. So we're not really changing the value of the landscape right now, but we could connect these two if you wanted to, which was set this further back. And to do that, you would just bring your line straight across like that. Like that. Here we go. And then you have to continue the values down. See, that's just set the mountain right back. And the mountain, you can then say, well, because this mountain is facing the sunlight, you could lighten that up just a speck, not too much. Like that. But you want this to be a nice gradual blend. And then you can say, well, mountain, we need you to be a little bit darker right here because the light is not hitting you. Like that. So you understand, hopefully you're getting now that the importance of the values, that's really what makes the, oops, I used that brush on the wrong end. Now we have a ridge of paint, which I can fix up slowly. Using the values that's what distinguishes the light and dark with the atmospheric perspective. Okay, this mountain's a bit too pokey, so I'm just going to take my lightest value and I'm just going to Put a bit of a peak there. I can also use the brightest white just on the top edge. And then when you have it to the same value as the sky, then it looks like there's clouds going over. So just want to show you that. We're not going to leave it like that, but I just want to show you that. There we go. Just softening everything here. When you're doing this, don't do it like this. Turn your piece around and work this way to make it easy for you. When you want to have a haze, this is how you can really, as I'm smudging and smudging and smudging, where eventually the values look like they disappear, then it'll look like there's something right in front. Like right now, it just looks like a little gully and it looks like there's a mist right there. But if I want to make that just a little bit further in the distance, oh, that's too much. Get that gray. You want it lighter. So every layer is going to be either lighter or darker than what you're painting on top of. Okay. See how he's got that? Looks like there's a mist there. That mist, though, looks like there's a dark patch right here, which doesn't make sense. So on my dirty brush, I'm just going to pick up white. And then I'm going to soften that right here. But now you see how hard edged that mountain is? Soften the brush and just gently go over the edge. Just to soften that a little bit. So you can see how they go back. And then these two here, now I'm looking at upside down. Now these two here, see how they blend in? You can turn around and you can, how we connected those that set this one in the background, you could connect those with wet paint, not dry paint. And something a little bit bigger. Use the biggest brush you can. And we can just connect those. See, you get something rough there. This is where we're getting more into impressionistic painting. You could even go more abstract. You got some action going on there. The style of painting you have really doesn't affect the technique, more the concept of the technique, because what you're looking at is values. And let's see, where else do we have to look? Oh, upside down. Hang on, let me just turn this around a bit. Okay. So we've got that set. I'm just going to let me just lighten that just a little bit. What I just said not to do. It's all with values. Okay, see that brought it out a little bit more forward because it's lighter. If I wanted to bring that part out a little bit more, come in with a bit more white. Not a lot, because now we're just working with the layers. So all we're doing now is I'm just bringing that part of the mountain a little bit more forward. See? This one is, I could probably mist this up just a little bit more. So I'm just going to use a value lighter than this. And just mist that a little bit more. Wait for it to dry. Then I know that I'm going to have to darken that a little bit more. I can come in to really define that edge. See that line there? Go a value darker than that. Oh, I need to turn that, turn that around. And you can work with that. I'm looking at this now. Okay, I got to turn it around. I can't look at it upside down. I'm going to take a look at this now, and I'm just going to soften this up a little bit more. You don't want to do a whole lot. Now, we've got this pretty well set. I can come in, and now it's just a matter of just adjusting some of the details a little bit darker. So as the mountains come forward, they're going to be darker, and as they go further back, they're going to get what? So I want you to answer in the comments below. Mountains that are lighter mean what? And mountains that are darker mean what? And another pop quiz. Why do we want to soften the edges of mountains on the edges of your painting? Okay, why do we also want to make sure our outside edges and corners are a little bit darker? And then we're going to come in and you're going to get a value that is, if you want to really diffuse the horizon line, you want to make it the same as the bottom of the mountain. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter because we know what happens to paints. They get acrylics dry darker. Try to get the horizon line straight. If you need to, get your ruler and put in another line. Now watch. I'm going to come in and I'm going to put more light on the bottom. This should be done with a bigger brush though. Let me get a bigger brush. Get a bigger brush. Here we go. Just going to put now it's really wet and it's a glazing layer. When you work with a glazing layer, you're going to be able to see what's happening underneath, but you're not going to lose the detail. I'm doing it more to wet the whole piece because now I'm going to take, ooh, come on. I'm going to take a darker value, a bit darker than that, a bit darker than that. Come in, outside edge, come on. Outside edge and work it in to make it look like snow or even water. Remember, we're working black and white. Put a bit more blue in there. Try to keep it wet. And you may say that, well, if you're looking at a horizon line, is it correct that because there's mountains there, the light doesn't hit this part? Yes. And what you do at that point is you look at your reference material. And you paint what you see. So although values can be used to show you the atmospheric perspective and to bring stuff into the foreground, you can also use it, oh, that's crooked, to show where the light doesn't hit, like that. It's easier to do wet on wet though. And then if you want the snow drifts, you just take your brush on the side and you do that. Just make sure that your edges and corners are darker to contain everything. You're going to be relying on your reference material. So, right, I'm just showing you techniques. And there's a homework assignment. There we go. Let me just... And why do we have to wait for the paint to dry if it becomes tacky? Which is what it is right now. And looking at your piece upside down will also show you things that aren't quite right, which right here, and we are almost done. Now all I'm doing is I'm just adjusting the values to make sure that things are soft. Just don't do too much with detail on the outside edges because you don't want to have your eye drawn to the edge. You want your eye drawn to your center of focus. And that doesn't mean center of focus, but what the primary focus is. My primary focus for this piece is this area right here. And again, this was a more of an introduction as to the values when you're creating your artwork for atmospheric perspective, and then you just keep touching up. Want to set this mountain further back, so I'm going to lighten it. You can make it look like there's snow. Wait for that to dry. I just got a water drop on there. I'm going to cut into that edge. I'm cutting into the sky. And soften everything. Go. Where are we? Use the edge of that brush. I want that mist there. Just use that edge of that brush. Soften, soften, soften. It's going to create that nice mist. And that mountain is really set in the background now. I want to bring this one here. Just want to soften that up there. Let me just cut into here. Go. And I'm going to darken. See, it's not just about doing it and then just being done with it. There's things that you have to do, and I mean, if you get it done in one shot, that's fine. But I'm teaching here the actual foundation of what needs to be done. How much time you spend on it is up to you. Just wanted to bring that forward a bit more. Okay. If you're working on a canvas, you're going to find it a little bit more challenging to keep turning your canvas around, but just make sure that you do it. Just dry brushing a little bit of that there. And that's basically it. So now we have a good basis now for our atmospheric perspective. Really the one thing to do is if you take white, and now if you were doing this with color, we would tint the white with a little bit of yellow orange just to create a bit of a glimmer for the sun. Only on the outside edge, the top edge, just to create a little bit of that light. Now remember, that edge, almost like that silver lining thing, is only going to be in a very small area just to show where the sun is hitting. If it's too light, it's going to blend right into the sky like what it is here. So you can use that opportunity to say, well, then you're going to put a cloud there. Just going to do a little bit here, not too much. You could also just make it look like snow. I'm just going to soften that. Do whatever you have to do so you're comfortable and not in any pain when doing this. Okay. And then let's see. Let's work this one here. You don't want it to be perfect. Creating some depth in there. Remembering it's going to lighten as it dries. Hopefully don't lift up the paint there. It's wet. Yep, it did. Nice big spot here. All right. So other than that spot, we're done. Now, what you learned is, first of all, you can take Chromatic Black to make your colors. But what you learn basically is that values can not only be used to simulate an object like snow, water, ice, ground, okay? Values can be used to set things in the background. So sky dark at the top, because if you look at the sky, it's darker at the top, other than right now because we're in the middle of a major snowstorm, everything is white. Dark at the top, the sky gets lighter to the foreground. Foreground lighter at the top, darker to the bottom. So it's a mirror. Dark, light, light, dark. That's the basis. Then from there, you can put whatever objects that you want in there. And I adjusted, I blended mountains and all that stuff. This isn't about painting mountains. It's about creating the atmospheric perspective, that at the same time using the same values to create the elements. So I used atmospheric perspective to set mountains in the back, bring them forward. I also use the same values to create snow, and to also the snow kind of brings things a bit more forward for this thing here. I also use the same values to create the illusion of ice or snow. I also use those same values to contain the painting, so the eyes go more in here. One of the things I would look at is this mountain here. I would move that over this way. It's a bit too close to the center. Can you fix that? You sure can. You can even eliminate it. You just paint it the same color as the sky and then just blend everything out. So with values, there's a lot that you can do, but simplify it. So only work with Chromatic Black and white, or use Carbon Black and white, and then, you know, use your palette. Keep misting so you can reuse the colors. I cannot stress enough that even though we painted mountains and it's all fine and dandy, it's not about painting mountains. It's about understanding the values. Without knowing values, your painting's going to be flat regardless of what you do to it. So you got to learn your values. Oh yeah. Make sure you dust off your brushes if you haven't used them in a long time. And I think that's probably about it. Oh yeah, and make sure you let your pieces dry as soon as it becomes tacky. Otherwise, you lift up the paint. All right, so that's it for this foundation lesson. Let me know what you think. I want to see a picture of what you've done. It doesn't have to be perfect. All I want to see, it could be a triangle, whatever. I want to see something that has sky and ground, and something that shows it being more forward, and something that's being more further in the distance. That's all I want to see. I don't care how you do it. Well, no, I do care how you do it, because I don't want to see something that you printed digitally and then altered it. But I do want to see something where you understand what's forward and what's in the distance. So we're going to leave that there. Comment below if you have any questions. I want to see your photographs. Just do something to get it done. I know this video is a bit long. And now I'm going to clean up and get ready for the next video, which is going to be another atmospheric perspective study, but we're going to be using water. So until I see you in that lesson, stay inspired.